Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks Podcast. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about stress and the endocannabinoid system, a little bit about basically how your endocannabinoid system helps you control stress and helps you manage your mental health. And if you're having issues with your mental health or you know somebody who is, you might forward them this video, as there's going to be a lot of good information in this video that will really help you. So first of all, let's start with just a premise, an assumption, but this is an assumption that I have in all the work that I do about human function. And every time I look at, let's say, a problem, I'm going to look at it with these eyes and these, you can call them rose colored glasses, but I call them kind of God colored glasses. So in my mind, God or, creator or choose your higher power, your belief system, but that higher essence designed us pretty perfectly. So you're, as a machine, you're designed to always repair, always rebuild, always strive toward perfect, always strive toward perfect function, always strive toward perfect health, toward perfect mental health, toward perfect mental function, toward perfect mental clarity, toward perfect emotional health. Okay? So your body is always striving for these perfect goals. Perfect, 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 right? And that is no different when we think about mental health, when we think about our ability to generate mood, when we think about our, ability to handle stress, any of that. Again, if we're having difficulties with that, it's likely something else and not because you're broken, let's just say. So there are, let's say, disease states where these things can get super duper out of whack. And, we see things like schizophrenia or mental breaks or things like that. But again, your body is capable of recovering you from these situations. And that's a very important thing. There's certainly probably a line of too far gone, but most of us who are going to be listening to this video are not across that line. Okay. So that's the first thing. So again, if you're in a state or someone is in a state of mental, funkiness, listen to this video because I think it'll help you. And again, if you exercise some of the principles that I'm going to talk you through, the solutions, let's say, in this video, then it's really, really going to help you. And it could completely change your mental health, your mental situation, in the way that you view yourself and your own problems and difficulties. So let's start there again. And God is a perfect engineer, so he made all of us perfect, meaning that you as a vehicle, you as a form, are always striving toward perfect function, which is really, really cool. How does this work? Well, it works in a variety of different ways. It depends on the system. But we're going to talk about serotonin and dopamine today because that's what really donates stress and mood. And that's what, will give us stress or give us mood or make us feel bad or make us happy or any of those things. So it's just chemicals, all right? So it's just chemicals that your body wants to manufacture, and that generate all mood, okay? All really mental action, your ability to sleep, your ability to blink your eyes, your ability to control your body are generated by these two chemicals called dopamine and serotonin. And they're controlled by something called the endocannabinoid system, which is a responsive system. They're also controlled by many other systems. So again, just being out in the sun is going to likely make you feel good, and your dopamine levels and serotonin levels will increase just by being in the sun. And that is an external stimulus that will stimulate dopamine and serotonin inside of you. So just getting outside in the sun will help a lot of us feel better. We're going to talk about a lot more things that will help you feel better in a second if you're struggling with mood and happiness, let's say. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the endocannabinoid system. So the endocannabinoid system is our master regulatory system. So it sits in function above your central nervous system. And serotonin is a central nervous system ligand thing, right? So it is a receptor and ligand system that's within your central nervous system. So by virtue of that, the endocannabinoid system regulates this system. And, if you want to know directly how, calcium would be directly how, but many other sort of positive and negative feedback mechanisms. So the way it looks like your body works, and this is still somewhat theoretical, but we respond to things. So we'll respond to the sun, and we'll make more serotonin, and we'll feel better, and we'll be able to control our body better by virtue of that. If you have, let's say, something happen that is scary, like somebody approaches you with a gun, or something happens that's scary to you, you're going to have a fight. A lion comes into your room, right? So you're going to have a fight or flight reaction. That's immediate. And again, what immediately happens is because of your sensor mechanisms, because of the way your hypothalamus hippocampus works, you see danger, blap. You initiate all of these systems. Your serotonin system initiates, and that is fight or flight. So you want to run or you want to fight, and you're going to get a lot of other support from a lot of other neurochemicals to increase your muscle strength, to increase your brain function. So you're going to be able to make better decisions. You're going to be able to move fast, and you're going to be able to do whatever you're going to do quick. And that's fight or flight. We don't want to be that way all the time. And, in our environment right now, there's a lot of, let's say, fight or flight stimulation. It's, you're late on your car payment. This thing is happening, or that thing is happening, or XYZ is happening. And there's a lot of fight or flight stimulus in our environment right now. And again, what happens? All these chemicals spike, and, you have these chemical reactions to things, right? And they affect our mood. So if you get panicky, I'm late on my car payment. I'm panicky. Where am I going to get the money to pay for it? How am I going to do this? You get panicky, and it kind of gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets worse, right? Well, what keeps that under control? What calms all that down? So if we're having a fight or flight incident, how does it stop? And again, part of it is, our brains recognize, hey, whatever, the lion is out of the room, or I'm able to pay my, car payment or whatever, and the stimulation will stop and slow down. But how does that work? Well, the anti-regulatory, let's say, the thing that calms everything down is the endocannabinoid system. Depending on the systems, you have different ways to, let's say, initiate, that panic or that response, that immediate response. And again, it's different. The immune system has its own response. If you stop breathing for long enough, you're going to have a response. So there's lots of kind of these quick twitch, let's say, responses in the human body. But then what regulates them past that quick twitch, and how are they kind of calmed down? And okay, well, there is no lion in the room. You're going to be fine, or you're going to be able to pay your car bill this month, or whatever. So how are those calmed down? Well, it's by the endocannabinoid system. So our endocannabinoid system is kind of the regulator that calms everything down, okay? And this happens in a variety of ways. And depending on how, let's say, mechanical it is inside of you, and the more mechanical it is, the more serotonin's involved. So again, if you need to blink your eyes, that's a serotonin thing. When you get ready to eat, that's a serotonin thing. When you get ready to vomit, that's a serotonin thing. When you sleep, when you wake, those are serotonin endocannabinoid things. So the endocannabinoid system will use the serotonin system to try to manipulate you and kind of manage your fight or flight responses and calm them down, and manage your emotional reactions to things within reason, right? Okay, so that's the way it works. So again, God is a perfect engineer. All of us should have these systems working perfectly, unless there's some other external factor. And it turns out that's the problem with most of us, is there's some external factor. So that external factor could be just repeated stimulus, right? So if I'm going bankrupt and I'm getting divorced and I'm have all these things happening to me, that's a lot of stress, right? That's a lot of external stress that I'm not used to handling. And again, I can get very dysregulated around that system, but I'm going to have abnormally high levels of serotonin and dopamine if I'm going through something like that. And that's normal. My endocannabinoid system is going to be working hard to kind of manage that. And again, that's normal. So I could have extenuating things that are causing, increases in my stress level. And then I have to rely on the health of my endocannabinoid system to be able to manage that. Now, none of us have healthy endocannabinoid systems right now. So again, if you're going to rely on the health of your endocannabinoid system, I'm going to ask you, what type of dietary fats are you eating? Because that's how you feed the endocannabinoid system. And if you say, yeah, Chip, I'm eating all 4 dietary fats in proper ratios, then I'm going to say, okay, you are properly feeding your endocannabinoid system. But if you can't even identify the 4 main fats, then you're not. And again, if you're not eating those 4 main fats in the proper ratios, you're not. And you're not, because you can't do those things, all right? So none of us are properly feeding our endocannabinoid system. So we're not going to get the proper calm down response to fight or flight, okay? So that's just right off the bat. None of us are feeding the endocannabinoid system properly to be able to control these type of situations. Pretty important. Now, the other thing that's going on is, and again, God's a perfect engineer, so all of us should, we should have basically the same kind of response to the same stimulus. So not being able to pay my car payment or going bankrupt or getting divorced or whatever should create the same response in all of us. And the same thing with happy stuff. I just had a baby, or I just had a grandbaby, or whatever. All that happy stuff, we should all respond basically about the same. And it shouldn't be this, boys and girls, okay? It should be kind of this, all right? So we all should have the same responses to these things, and we don't. We do not, all right? So God is a perfect engineer. Why not? There must be extenuating circumstances. So what I'm telling you is, on your calm down system, there are extenuating circumstances. You don't know what kind of fats to eat, and you don't eat the right kind of fats, so you don't build a proper endocannabinoid system, and you can't manage those bursts, all right? That's problem 1. Problem 2 is that we all, because we don't understand how to work our body, we don't understand how to work our immune system, and we all are just hammered with pathogens every day. So what's a pathogen? It's a bacteria, it's a fungus, it's a virus, it's a parasite like a hook-rounded pinworm or a tapeworm. And because we don't know how to work our immune system, again, God's a perfect engineer. He built you one cool banging immune system that, again, none of us understand how to work. And I mean, I do, but and I'll teach you guys. I'm happy to teach you guys. We'll do lots of chip talks about how to work your immune system. There has been lots of chip talks about how to work your immune system, but we don't know how to work our immune system. So we all get invaded by these pathogens that cause infection. All right, well, what else does a pathogen do? Well, let's just take hook-rounded pinworms. That's the most common pathogenic infection, and you likely have hook-rounded pinworms. If you don't, it's a miracle, if you've never checked yourself. So almost all of us have hook-rounded pinworms, unless you're doing something to manage them. Guess what they like to do? They like to play around with serotonin, and they like to stimulate serotonin. Because when they stimulate serotonin, they're stimulating your body to do work. And them little critters want to control what kind of work you do. And they want you to work to produce them resources, which makes sense. And we don't think that bugs can be this smart, but they are. So the most common pathogen that we can get, hook-rounded pinworms, and by the way, if you want to know how to get rid of hook-rounded pinworms, ivermectin. Ivermectin is the best way. Fenbendazole, menbendazole will work. But ivermectin is the best way to get rid of hook-rounded pinworms. So anyway, but if you have hook-rounded pinworms, you're going to have wonky serotonin no matter what. No matter what. So if you have a hook-rounded pinworm infection and you don't know what fats to eat for your endocannabinoid system, you cannot have a proper mental response or emotional response to any problem. It's just that simple. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. And you might get stuck down here. Okay? So, are there ways to fix all this? Yeah, it's super easy. Let's get rid of your hook-rounded pinworm. Come into Neighborly Wellness. Let us hook you up to the bioresonance machine. We can tell you if you have indicated in frequency hook, round, and pinworms. Again, you have to be careful not to make claims. So we can, the machine is informational in frequency to identify hook, round, and pinworms inside of you, which is kind of cool. There's ways to establish if you have these infections. If you go to your physician, again, it's difficult for them. You're gonna have to take a poop test, and those poop tests, depending on the stage, let's say, of the hook, round, and pinworms, they may not come out in your poop. Again, they've kind of got to be laying eggs to come out in your poop, and that only happens around a full moon. So it's better to use, let's say, some of these tests that are a little bit woohoo right now, but it'll be part of our life later. Begin to use some of this leading, let's say, technology, or this new technology that's coming out. But anyway, we can identify these things inside of you. So I can, real quick, identify if you have hook, round, and pinworms. And if you do, your serotonin's going to be messed up until we get rid of the hook, round, and pinworms. Just that simple. On the endocannabinoid side, so again, if you're a cannabis person, you're supplementing the endocannabinoid system with cannabinoids. But you need to understand what those cannabinoids do and how they're working that system. So thankfully, things like THC, what's the endocannabinoid system do, first of all, in this scenario? So we have a fight or flight response. Lions in the room. Oh no. Can't pay my car payment. Oh no. We have a fight or flight response where we panic, right? But then we have all this release of all of these neurochemicals that help us make better decisions, that help us run faster, that help us do all, perform better, right? So we have all this performance enhancing stuff and mental enhancing stuff that gets released under this situation. If that situation persists, again, we don't need to be running around in circles and trying to make quick decisions all the time. That's not helpful. We need to kind of slow down, and we need to make slower, more informed decisions. And again, how does that happen? The endocannabinoid system kind of puts a warm blanket, let's say, on the fire that gets lit by fight or flight. All right. So if you don't have the proper endocannabinoids, you can't properly put out that fire. So if you're walking around stressed out, ADHD, tweaky, just everything sort of causes panic, then that's because your endocannabinoid system is not active enough. You don't have the horsepower in your endocannabinoid system to be able to control your serotonin and dopamine fight or flight mental responses, okay? So again, how do you fix that? It's a matter of the fats. Again, if you do use cannabis, you can supplement with THC. That will help. And this is why so many people with kind of mental issues like THC, because it's calming down that dopamine and serotonin. It's calming down that fight or flight response. It's the calming factor. And the reason for that is, again, it's supplementing into the endocannabinoid system, and it's supplementing for something called anandamide that will calm down that response. All right. So if you're not a cannabis person, how do you properly feed? And again, the endocannabinoid system is supplemented by cannabinoids. It is not the natural way your body feeds the endocannabinoid system. Just like an opiate will supplement your opiate system, but it's not the way that your body naturally hits those receptors. In a similar way, the endocannabinoid system is naturally fed by dietary fats. So if you're not a cannabis person, meaning you're not supplementing, and you're not aware of dietary fats, then this is going to be super important. So of the fats that you eat, here's what you need to do. You need to have 50% of the fats that you eat monounsaturated fat. Okay, where does monounsaturated come from? Olive oil, peanuts, any nut will have more monounsaturated fat than any of the other fats. Generally, check them, make sure. I'm pretty sure of that, but any is always a bad statement. Most nuts, let's say. So check them, but you want something, and again, you want to be aware of all the fats that you eat. So if you're eating a nut, and then you're also eating, let's say, avocado, then that's going to be pretty good on your monounsaturated fat over saturated. But you want about 50% of your fats to be monounsaturated fat. Why? Because that builds a super important endocannabinoid called oleomide. All right? You want about 30% of your fats to be saturated fat. So if you're a meat eater, well, again, you're getting saturated fat in that meat. If you like avocado, that's a really good source of saturated fat. Saturated fat is in nuts, seeds, beans, so it's in everything. But the nice thing about nuts, seeds, and beans is they'll have proper ratios of fats. They won't have too much. They'll always have more monounsaturated than saturated fat. The other two fats you need to be concerned with are essential, meaning you have to have them. If you do not have these fats, you will suffer. And you might suffer mentally, you might suffer obesity, you might suffer type 2 diabetes, you might suffer in a variety of ways depending on your genetics, but you will suffer. And these fats are omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. And we must take these fats in a 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6 to a 1-to-4 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. If you do not do that, you will hurt yourself. And none of us, we're about 1-to-20 on our ratio right now. And that's why a lot of us are as sick as we are, as mentally unable to control ourselves as we are, as impulsive as we are, as sick in other ways with, almost every sickness can be tied back to this omega-3, omega-6 ratio. So about 20% of the fats that you eat need to be omega-3 and omega-6 fats in a 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6 or 1-to-4 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. If you can do that, you properly feed your endocannabinoid system. It's very, very difficult to do that just, let's say, eating, without a lot of thought and intention and looking at what's in the food that you eat. I would encourage everyone to, first of all, right off the bat, more important than any vitamin, okay? This is more important than any vitamin, getting these fats right. If you can get the fats right that you eat every day, and then you can get the 9, and you have to have 9 essential amino acids, and you have to have a certain amount of those. I think 15 grams, maybe more than that. Don't quote me on that, but you have to have all 9 essential amino acids in a certain amount every day. Those are the two most important things for your body. If you can begin to do that, and if you can get rid of the pathogens, now we've addressed both sides of the problem, okay? So we've addressed what might be inside of you that's impacting your ability to generate serotonin and kind of keep it at normal levels. And if you've got bugs inside of you, they're going to mess with they mess with tryptophan, which messes with your serotonin no matter what. All bugs pretty much do. Again, not good to say all. Most bugs pretty much do. But they'll mess with your tryptophan, which messes with the serotonin pathway and will cause changes in your serotonin status. So if we get rid of the bugs, and we can do that, okay? So there's ways to do that. So we get rid of the bugs, number one. And then number two, we make sure that you're getting the right profile of fats to build endocannabinoids to control the downside. Then you're going to do this. You're not going to do this. And I don't care what you've been told. I don't care what you've been diagnosed with. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. These principles work, and they always work because they're natural principles. They're God's principles. So hopefully you've enjoyed this today. Join us next week for another exciting version of Chip Talks, where we'll talk about more cool stuff. Again, as always, Chip Talks podcast, you can find me. I'm available for consultation. If you have any questions, we work with people every day. That's what we do. So love to hear from you guys, and love to hear what you think of these videos. Anyway, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.